Okay, so now we turn to rehearsing Shakespeare's words. My process tends to follow about sort of 5 stages, and these are roughly in order. We start always with a read-through of the entire play, everyone sitting around the table, and I do this read-through in that way once only. After that, all the reading is done on stage, meaning that the actors have to move around. They are standing up. There is no more sitting around the table. That leads to the next stage, which is that during the reading, as they are moving around, we identify the different units of action, and within that, the key words. The units of action, just to explain, the play has 15 scenes broken up into 5 acts. I broke the scenes down into a total of 72 units. These are smaller units of action within each scene, and then found the key word of each unit. This that
舞台稽古に関しては5つの過程で行っています。まず最初に一度だけ全員で通し読みを行います。その後は全て舞台上で動きながらセリフを読んでいくことになります。次に舞台上で動きながらセリフを読んでいく中で、動きや演技をいくつかのまとまりとしてくくっていき、それぞれのまとまりのキーワードを探っていきます。作品は15の場面を5幕に分けていますが、この15の場面を72のくくりに分けました。
Word of each unit. This then helps to begin to look at the next stage, which is to try and discover what is the mask of Shakespeare. What I mean by the mask is that certainly Shakespeare in English has a very clear structure. The verse is very clear in terms of its structure, its form. And it seems to me that for the English actors, we have to arrive at finding the form, the shape of his language. And that's a little bit like finding the form and the shape of a mask. The first thing in terms of finding this shape is what I call the roadmap, which is to find how do we travel through the language of Shakespeare. One way to help the actors is to follow every punctuation, to remember that the thought of the character ends with a full stop, not a comma. So you have to carry on your thought up to the full stop. But how do you make these complicated thoughts very clear? This is where this system of road mapping helps. That also opens up what is the imagery in the words that Shakespeare is using, and of course the meaning of the words. In England today, about half the words that Shakespeare uses are no longer understood because we don't use them anymore. And this process then also makes it much easier for us to appreciate, to get a taste of the rhythm of the text, particularly when there are exchanges between characters.
この括りを作ることで、シェイクスピアの仮面の形を特定することが可能になります。シェイクスピア作品は明確な形を持った韻文からなっていて、シェイクスピアの言葉で作り出される形は、シェイクスピアがかぶっている仮面の形のようなもので、特定していくことが必要です。シェイクスピアの中の駆読点を細かく見ていくことが、この形を特定するための道しるべとなります。登場人物の考えは、 コンマではなくピリオドで完了し、そのひとまとまりとなった複雑な考えをどう明確に伝えるかという作業になります。その作業の中で、セリフの中で使われる修辞表現と現代では一般的に使われなくなってきている言葉の意味を探る必要があります。これをすることで登場人物のやり取りのリズムがつかみやすくなります。
So then the next stage is when I have begun to much more systematically block the action, which means to position the actors where they need to be. This hopefully becomes much more of an organic process, which is that the actors have, as they've understood the words more and more, appreciated the rhythm of the language, they've been moving on stage. So all it requires for me to do is to say, yep, that's it, keep that, and let's fix that moment. And that leads to the final stage, which is the developing the heart, the shape of the heart of the characters, and those moments. For example, Leontes saying, too hot, that moment when suddenly jealousy takes over.
次の段階としては、役者に動きをつけていきます。役者がセリフやそのリズムを理解することで、舞台上で自然と動くようになり、それを調整していくというのが理想的です。そして最後は、登場人物の心情を明確にしていく作業となります。例えば、嫉妬に駆られたレオンティーズが熱すぎるという場面の理解です。
So let's move on to the next slide. This is again from my Bible. I think it was possibly week 3 or so, or week 2. This is the beginning of rehearsals. Sorry, when I was putting down what I thought would be the key challenges facing us. Leontes' jealousy, of course. What is the jealousy? How is it informed? Is it something that is part of his makeup? So is he slightly mad or slightly prone to jealousy? Or is there a reason behind the jealousy? The separation of Hermione from Leontes when she's sent off to prison. What does Mamilius see? Shakespeare doesn't tell us anything, doesn't words, but I thought it was very important that Mamilius saw this. But what does he see? Does he see his parents arguing? Does he see his father possibly slapping his mother? So a really important moment. The trial of Hermione. How is she brought in? Is she dragged in? Is she stripped of all her royal clothes? Again, I had a question here. Does Mamilius see anything? Because still in the trial, we don't yet have the news that Mamilius is dead. It comes after the trial, or towards the end of the trial. Then, of course, something that came from the very, very early stages of thought. How does Hermione faint at the news of Mamilius's death? Does she just drop down onto the floor? Does she stand immobile like a statue at the news? Then Leontes' expression, reaction to this news. Does he freeze at the news of the death of his son, on top of everything else that's happening? Or how does he express his grief? Does he fall? Does he tear the whole palace down?
このスライドでは舞台稽古が始まった際の思いつきが記されています。レオンティーズの嫉妬は狂気によるものか、それとも何か発端となった理由があるのか。ハーマイオニーと引き離される際、マミリアスの目には何が映っていたのか。シェイクスピアは明確にしていませんが、親が口論をしているところを目撃するのか、 父が母を叩くところを目撃するのか、ハーマイオニーは裁判の場面に引きずられてくるのか、女王としての服を剥ぎ取られているのか、その時息子は何を見て後に死ぬのか、息子の死を知った母親はどう気を失うのか、父親は同じ場面でどう反応するのか。
Another challenge was, of course, the Bohemian shore, which is scene 3 of Act 3. How do we suggest this shore? We know it's very windy, it's stormy, it's also not very green, it's barren shore. How do we suggest it on the stage? And how do we express the dream that Antigona had? Antigonus is the old way of talking about that character. That name was changed to Antigona. What is that dream of Hermione? Is it a nightmare? Does Antigona recall the dream, or does Hermione actually come into the dream? And of course, also, how do we do the bear? Is it done by the actors? How do they do it? Do they use chairs? Do they use sticks? Time, one of the big challenges. How do you express it? Is it a character? Is everyone time? Is there a sense of the clock of time? Clearly, we need this moment because it is critical in terms of the story. Then this festival in Bohemia, the sheep shearing festival. What is a sheep shearing festival? How has it been done in England? Is it a dance? Is there a song? So again, these are questions which are helping me to think about the nature of that festival. Once again, it comes back to this thing of grief. How express Leontes' sorrow? Grief became a really important thing for me. It's one of the questions I asked all the actors at the end of the first week. I'd said to them, every single one of you has got a grief at the beginning of the story. I don't know what it is by the end of the story. That is what you have all got to find out. And of course, the other great challenge was the statue itself. What is the statue? How does it come alive? How does it come alive? Does she simply move on stage? Do we use projection? Yes, so these became a very important as a kind of little a brief sort of reminder to myself of the key challenges during the course of the play. So,
ボヘミアの海岸は荒涼として嵐が吹き荒れているがどう表現するのか、アンティゴナの夢や熊や登場人物としての時間をどう見せるのか、羊の毛刈り祭りはどのようなものなのか、悲しみはどう表現されるのか、演出をするにあたり悲しみというのがとても重要な要素になり、舞台稽古の最初の1週間が終わった時点で役者に皆さんすべて話の始めに悲しみを抱えています。それが芝居の終わる頃にどのような悲しみになっているのか、それぞれ発見していく必要があるということを伝えました。そして彫刻をどう表現するのかというのも大きな課題です。動き出すことで生き返るのか、それとも映像を使うのか検討しました。
Just finding the key word in each unit. So I've talked about these units of action, and from my notebook, I've just shown some images of how I broke down each scene and what I thought were the not just the units, but also what were the words of each one. This led then for us to make a sentence out of each unit. So, for example, scene 1 has got 2 units, hopes and affection. And scene 2 of Act 1 has got 12 units. So I got the actors to make the sentence. So in the first scene, scene 1, the sentence they made is the hopes of affection. In the second one, scene 2, it was broken up into about 3 sentences. And the important thing is that they use the words in the creating of the sentence. Each word has to follow in the order it is in the scene itself. What I think this helps us to do is to discover what I feel is the skeleton of each scene. Not the flesh, but what is the skeleton? What is it that holds the scene up? And what holds the scene are the words, the key words. And once you have the key words, you can improvise and get the sense of the mood, the feel, the taste of each scene.
場面をさらに細かく分けていったことを話しましたが、それぞれの括りを用いて一文で各場面を表現するという作業をしました。例えば最初の場面を2つの括りに分けました。希望と愛情です。第2の場面は12の括りに分けました。それぞれの括りの文は役者に作ってもらいました。最初の場面に対しては希望される愛情という表現が作られました。第2の場面は3つの表現が与えられました。表現を作る際、キーワードはセリフの中の順番で使われるように指示をしました。この作業によって場面の骨格が明確になります。この骨格を構成しているのが言葉であり、キーワードさえ押さえれば、その場面の特徴を捉えることができるようになります。
Okay, so to the next slide. So this is a note where I was thinking about the music and the movement. So in working with the choreographer and the composer, I had to help them also by identifying for them, these are places where I see some formal movement, like a dance or whatever. And in terms of music, where I see the input from the composer. So I drew a map going right through the text of where I see these moments and giving them some little direction of what could be the quality of the choreography or the music that I wanted.
このスライドは音楽や振り付けに関するメモです。振付師と作曲家にはどの場面で踊りや音楽を入れるのか、セリフの中に示していきました。またどのような踊りや音楽であるべきかの指示も入れました。
So on to the next slide. So at the very beginning, on the first day, before the reading, or no, after the first reading, Claudia then showed everyone in the room, which is the actors and the stage management, what the design looked like, the set design and the costume design. And then the stage management created a mock-up in the rehearsal room. So for the ropes, we used rolled up saris to create that, give the actors a visual sense of what the set would look like. And the dimensions on the floor gave them a sense of how big the floor area would be.
初日、通し読みを終えた時点で、クラディアはセットと衣装がどうなるのかを見せてくれました。それをもとに舞台美術担当者がサリーで綱を作り、床に舞台の大きさを示す印をつけ、仮のセットを作りました。
So on to the next slide. And this is just giving some early photographs of rehearsals. As you can see, the actors still have the script in hand. I am very key, certainly working with English actors, that again, as part of the roadmap, that you follow the text, not to start learning the lines too quickly. So everyone must have the script in their hand. There is a pause here, or there's a comma here. What does that mean? When do you breathe? One of the things that they all found is that part of the rhythm, sometimes Shakespeare has a character's thought, which starts with the first word and then ends with a full stop, but there is no comma or any other punctuation mark in between. And that goes over 4 or sometimes 8 lines of verse. The challenge there is you have to say that thought in one breath. That's a fantastic challenge for actors. When do you decide to breathe? How do you take that breath? And then say that sentence. And that gives you a sense of the rhythm of the play. And so it was very important that they kept the scripts in hand.
このスライドは稽古の初期の頃の写真でして、役者はまだ台本を手にしています。先ほども話しましたように、記録点はシェイクスピア作品を理解するための道しるべとなります。一つも記録点のない4行から8行にもなる長いセリフがあり、どうやって一気にそれを言うのかが課題になります。役者にとってとても大きな挑戦ですが、それによって作品のリズムが作られていきます。記録点を道しるべとしてどうセリフを言うのか探るために台本を使いながら稽古をするのが重要でした。
The next stage, next slide. So this is my thoughts at the end of the 4th week. Now it's the tearing the hair out moment. You know, you've spent 4 weeks and suddenly you can't see what is the play. And so here are some of my worries at the end of the 4th week. At the end of every week, I used to write down where we are at this stage. So my worry at the end of the 4th week was, one of them was to keep an eye on what is the story that is being told and how it is being told. This thing of what is the story, it's very easy to lose sight of the story. And so it was a reminder to myself of keep an eye on the story itself. Then, of course, another reminder: what is outstanding? What have I still not done? And amongst my thoughts was the interpretation. What exactly is the interpretation? Is it that Leontes is mad? Or is it that he has a momentary fit of what he calls tremor cordis? From which he can no longer then, having had that fit, he cannot then withdraw from it. Or is he justified in his jealousy? Again, it's these sort of reminders. How do you organize this critical moment of his jealousy?
焦り始める4週目が終わった時点でのメモです。4週間経って突然作品が分からなくなることがあり、その際に記したメモになります。話が何か、それをどう伝えるかということを見失わないように、まだできていないことは何か、作品をどう解釈しているのか、レオンティーズは気が触れてしまったのか、それとも一時的な精神疾患を患ったのか、もしくは正当な理由があっての嫉妬なのか、この重要な場面をどう解釈するのか。
Say here is I've given an exercise to the actors for them to all write down a number for their relationship to each other. So the number had to go from 1 to 5. They could only go from like to love. No hate was allowed. You can only like someone or you love someone. And while I was rehearsing, so on the second week, I think, I asked Leontes what number he'd given to Hermione and to Polixenes. And he said 5 to Polixenes and 4 to Hermione. So I asked Polixenes, what number have you given? Polixenes had given 5 to his relationship to Leontes and 4 to Hermione. I asked Hermione. Hermione had given 5 to Leontes and only 4 to Polixenes. Now I thought this was very, very interesting in terms of who actually loves people.
稽古の中で役者に自分が演じる登場人物が他の登場人物に抱く愛情の度合いを1から5で示す作業をしてもらいました。2週目にレオンティーズを演じた役者に誰にどの数字をつけたのかを尋ねたところ、ポレクセニーズに対しては5、ヘマイニーズに対しては4と答えました。ポレクセニーズを演じた役者はレオンティーズに対して5、ヘマイニーに対して4、ヘマイニーを演じた役者はレオンティーズに対して5、ポレクセニーズに対して4を与えました。登場人物同士の関係が分かるとても面白い作業でした。
So that's the end of my 4th week. On to the next slide. So this is now us. We've finished the rehearsal process. We get into the technicals. We are now just getting ready to meet the audience, for the words to meet their audience. And as you'll see from the next slide, we have the technical rehearsals where there is a music composer, first Imran Ahmed on the left, then the sound designer Florence Hand, and the lighting designer Ben Ormerod. And between these 3, they have constructed the mood, the feel of the story as it unfolds to us, and of course through Claudia's designs and the set and the costumes. Okay, I think that's the end of this whole rehearsal process, and hopefully we can now just look at what the show looked like.
次は稽古が終わり芝居を観客に披露し、シェイクスピアの言葉を観客に披露する過程になります。作曲担当者、音響デザイナー、照明デザイナーは物語が展開していく中で作品の特徴を観客に伝えていきます。これから実際に作品がどのようなものであったかを見ていきましょう。